Playing out in the highest legislative body of the country. I'm talking about the Senate. It all started a few weeks ago when there was a controversy over a seating arrangement between the senator representing Kogi Central District, Natasha Akpoti, and the Senate President, 𝐷𝐿, and that has since snowballed into allegations of sexual harassment and the suspension of the senator for 6 months. Now, the controversy, of course, stems from that heated confrontation on the 20th of February when she protested the reassignment of her Senate seat by Akpabio. The matter was then referred to the Ethics Committee for investigation, but she didn't appear before the committee, citing the court order restraining the probe. A suspension also followed a representation of a sexual harassment petition against Akpabio. The petition was later accepted and referred to the Ethics Committee for the review. Now, reacting to a suspension, Akpoti Duagan described it as unjust and a violation of principles of fairness and natural justice. Let's take you to the floor of the National Assembly first to what played out during the proceedings that led to a suspension by the Ethics Committee. And then we'll also listen to the voice of the Senate President, 𝐷𝐿 Akpabio, while he was speaking at an event to commemorate International Women's Day, where he categorically stated that there had not been any form of sexual harassment of Natasha Akpoti by himself. Take a listen.
I have to send one of the sergeant at arms to her that her conduct is in breach of this rule. So I am urging the indulgence of Senator Natasha to please observe our rules.
And the petition is against the President of the Nigerian Senate, Senator 𝐷𝐿 Akpabio, for sexual harassment, abuses of office, and malicious obstruction of legislative functions of distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan. So with your kind permission, may I please lay this petition?
Is there any legal impediment? Please proceed to lay the petition.
That all efforts to get Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan to move to her newly assigned seat fell on deaf ears as Senator Natasha Uduaghan Akpoti continued shouting on top of her voice and pointing her fingers at the presiding officer.
If you follow the sequence, issues of discrimination cannot be proven. It is actually the opposite. That under your leadership, distinguished Senator Mrs. Uduaghan can claim victimization based on facts.
Today, we are faced with this situation that we all know impinges on the integrity of this institution. We want to ask if it is convenient for the Senate and Mr. President that the 6 months punishment for suspension be reduced to 3 months.
My advice and appeal to her will be that she spends her period of suspension to read and learn our rules very well.
Prayer 1.
Yes.
That the Senate do suspend Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan for 6 months for a total violation of the Senate Standing Rules 2023 as amended for bringing the presiding officer and the entire Nigerian Senate in general to a public opprobrium. With effect from 6th day of March 2025 from all legislative activities forward. Those in support of prayer 3 say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan shall submit a written apology to the Senate before any reconsideration by the Nigerian Senate. Those in support of prayer 2 say aye. Aye. Those against say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. For the duration of her suspension, she cannot come or be seen within the vicinity of the National Assembly.
This injustice will not be sustained.
Have you ever wondered, did you take stock when you were with me, when you came to see me with your women leaders? Did you ask me, when did this issue happen? It's only yesterday that I realized that what we are talking about happened only after the change of seats in the Senate. That is when hell was let loose and all sorts of allegations came up. Only after the change of seat in the Senate and change of committee which my senators know happen from time to time, are said to have happened on the 8th of December, a day to my birthday, which was celebrated in the stadium in 2023. So from 8th of December 2023, I never heard, my wife never heard, no Nigeria never heard, even the husband never heard any issue of sexual harassment until her committee was changed, and then her seat was changed, and she went on. Have you ever wondered the trauma caused by that same woman on the other people she had accused in the past? None has been proven so far. I've refrained myself from making a statement. Look at these beautiful women. They've come across me so many times. Have I ever harassed any of you? Or is the person thinking that you are not beautiful? So I don't want to dwell on that. But let me just say that time will tell. If we are in court, the court will decide. My other sister, the one they sometimes refer to as Joy Nuni, I like to mention her name because she'll be hearing from my lawyer anytime in the next 1 week. Crime never dies. When the minister was speaking, the minister said that women constitute 51% of the voting population in Nigeria. So why then are you taking the backstage in terms of political representation? Women will never vote for themselves. But we have a solution. We have a solution. I've traveled around. I've seen what is happening in Tanzania. I've seen what is happening in South Africa, Malawi, and so many other countries. They have a certain percentage constitutionally reserved for women. If it means tinkering with the act to enable women, the Electoral Act, to enable women to have solid say in the parliament, we will do so.
Well, 𝐾𝐈𝐒 𝐒𝐈𝐒 there, the Senate President, speaking at that special event for International Women's Day. He also used that opportunity to address the allegation of sexual harassment leveled against him by the Kogi Central Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. So, joining us this morning to look at some of these issues and more, we have Jibrin Okutekpa, is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the podium this morning. Great to have you.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, sir. Great to have you. So it's a panel discussion. So we have two panelists joining us. Let me introduce Barrister Yomi Ogunola, is your colleague in the profession. Barrister, good morning.
Oh, Toba, good morning. And let me say a wonderful morning to Prof too. And more importantly, to our March guest, because he is not coming in August. My senior and a respected senior advocate of Nigeria. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, my brother. God bless you for your kind words.
Thank you.
I just hope that our discussion here will be listened to by those who have responsibility of doing so.
Certainly, of
I
course.
reluctantly agree to be here.
Certainly. And we have Professor Emi of the University of Ibadan, Department of Political Science. Prof, good morning, sir.
Good morning, and good morning to the special guest. Good morning to my colleague, Barrister Ogunola. It's a pleasure to be here this bright Saturday morning.
Yes, I mean, let me go to Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Sir, I mean, we've had different reactions to the drama that has been playing out in the Senate for the last couple of weeks. Of course, it came to a head with the suspension of Senator Natasha a few days ago by the Ethics Committee. A lot of interpretation has been made. Can you give us a position of the law regarding suspension of a lawmaker by the National Assembly? And also make reference to, Abdul Jibrin, Ali Ndume, Abdul Ningi. They say there's already a precedent that, the courts have ruled that National Assembly cannot suspend a member. What's the position of that? Is a panel discussion. So our panelists will be asking you questions and making contribution as the conversation progresses. So, Prof, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yusuf. My question to the senior advocate has to do with the internal rules of Parliament. If you look at those rules, they are set by Parliament itself, and it can also be amended by Parliament. But in a situation where a member finds the rule oppressive, can the person go to court? Because I remember there's also some kind of rule that says Parliament cannot, or parliamentarians cannot misrepresent or present Parliament in bad lights. And they say when you do that, especially by speaking to the press, they can suspend you. And when you're on suspension, you forfeit salaries and emolument. I think these rules look very draconian. And I'm wondering why the members of the Parliament, one, accepted that kind of rule or even agreed that that should be part of the rules of Parliament. Then the second part has to do with the powers of the leader, because the president is supposed to be first among equals.
Yes.
But the kinds of powers given to him gives me a lot to worry about. For instance, they say he can move a senator from one seat to the other without explanation, without explaining the principles on which those movements should be done. Because even in our university senate, one of the challenges that we face is that if you are not very friendly to the vice chancellor or you are in bad book, you may raise your hand in Senate and you will never be called to speak. Which we think is when that happens, we think is very bad politics. And I think it's the kind of thing that is playing out in the Senate, where not only will you be allocated a seat out of that in obscurity, you may raise your hand and keep raising your hand forever. So I want your take on these two issues.
Right.
And what can be done to address them.
Thank you, Prof. The first issue is about rules of Senate. Now, in the hierarchies of laws, we have the Constitution, we have the law made by the National Assembly, we have the rules of court, and all other subsidiary legislation. In my humble views, the rules of Senate are not superior to constitutional provisions. And so the salaries and allowances of the members of parliament are functions exclusively reserved for the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Committee, which is another constitutional arm of
agency
department
yes.
set by the Constitution. Therefore, it is my view with profound respect that if any rules of Senate collides with the provisions of the Constitution that deals with the right to fair hearing, the right to be told of your offense before you are punished, the right to be removed from your seat to go to another seat, which seat you had earlier on acquired the right. Those are rights that nobody can treat with such levity and audacities of arrogance. And so my view, therefore, is that any person in the National Assembly who feels aggrieved that the rules collide with his right can go to court to set that portion of the rules aside. But until that is done, no members of parliament is entitled to ignore it. So inherent in the answer to that is the question whether or not the Senate president or any presiding officer of the national or state houses of assembly can act arbitrarily in a democratic society governed by the rule of law. Because without the rule of law, you can't have democracy. And the rule of law is so sacrosanct and is the live wire of democracy that if we jettison the rule of law, which includes the right not to be unjustly punished, the right to be heard, the right for you not to be judged in your own cause, the right to avoid appearance of impropriety, then we are heading to a calamitous end. That's why, in my view, therefore, it is my view that the National Assembly and any member of the Senate should go to court and ensure that some of the draconian provisions in their rules are struck down, and the court has the power to do so. Now, coming to the question of why do they allow it, let me be honest with you, that most of those people in that place did not get to that place on the basis of merit. They went there on the basis of being sponsored by one set of persons or the other. And so when they are there, they are what late Fela Anukulako Kuti called zombie. Anywhere they say they go, that is where they go, because they are afraid of losing the perquisites on humongous amount of money attached to that place they are doing what I believe, in my view, with profound respect, and I mean no insult, absolutely nothing for the interest of the wealth, interest of Nigeria, because the principal functions of parliament, according to the Nigerian Constitution, in section 4, is to make law for peace, order, and good governance. I ask you, Prof, how does the Hulabalu, the crisis, suspension, not suspending, quarreling on the National Assembly, carrying chair, fighting here and there, is a function that has made law and order for peace and good governance in Nigeria? So in my view, therefore, I think with profound respect, Nigeria seems to be a committee of friends. So you take your own, I take my own, without any regard for the generality of the people. And that's our problem. And the masses too are docile. We are always in lamentation. One of my learned friends says something that I love. He said controversy in Nigeria has 2 weeks lifespan. It will die down. And we are not even students of constitutional and jurisprudential history. Because when you look at the National Assembly, what are they doing? When you engage them in the professional services they were supposed to render to the nation, screening of ministerial nominee, judicial officers, have you seen a serious interrogation of the will-be ministers? Sometimes they say they have these rules and regulations that once you are a member of the National Assembly or any of the assembly before, you take a bow and go. How does your taking a bow and go demonstrate your competence and capacity to render effective and efficient service to Nigerians? So, Prof, Nigerians seems to have taken their faith that whatever they say, nobody is hearing.
Right.
That is why you see what is going on. But let me conclude by saying this.
Yes.
Until there are consequences for misbehavior, Nigeria will still witness more draconian and authoritarian display of power in democratic institutions. Like today, the other day, those who were victims of the unconstitutional annulment of June 12 elections were gathered to be lectured by the person that ordinarily should by now be a guest of the security agencies and be imprisoned. They donated money there, and the money there that was donated is sufficient to furnish one of the faculties of the universities, the faculty of medicine or faculty of law, to world international standard. But Prof, you are in the university system, and I'm sure you graduated when university was university. Do you see Nigerian university system as universities in the concept it is known in terms of universality of bringing all manner of persons and conducive environment for learning? Prof, I am worried, and Nigerians should worry that our society is not heading to a well-defined destination among committee of nations.
Right. Let's go to Barrister now. Barrister, you have the floor.
Yes, Toba, thank you very much.
Yes.
And thank you once again, learned senior advocate. Now, learned senior advocate, a couple of days ago, a former president of Senate, Bukola Saraki, admonished the Senate to, in the president's circumstance, save the institution rather than the individuals. It appears the advice was ignored with the unfolding drama. Now, given how Akpabio emerged as leader of Senate, given the allegations of the subservience of the National Assembly to the executive arm of government, do you see the invisible hands of the executive in the preservation of the status quo?
Is that a question to me?
Yes, it's for you, sir.
But you know, I have already answered this question. There is what is called the state captured in Nigeria as of today. And let me be honest with you. Apart from the executive that is executive, how independent do you see our legislative institution? Look, in all of these things, I cannot but say that when an ant is dancing on top of the river, there is certainly a drum beater beneath that dance. So for me, you cannot, no reasonable man or woman can run away from the conclusion that there are those who are beating the drum for Mr. President of the Senate to do what they are doing. And for me, let me be honest with you, it is intended to cow Senator Natasha Akpoti to submission. And it happens everywhere. Like Prof rightly pointed out, if you are too antagonistic to a vice chancellor of a university, or even come down to our own noble profession, and I'm sure you have attended a couple of meetings, those they perceive to be against them hardly get opportunity to speak. And that is the nature of Nigerians. When they get power, they abuse it. And they abuse that power because there are no consequences. That is why our tormentor-in-chief are celebrated across Nigerians. If you happen to be a senior advocate of Nigeria that cannot afford some level of affluence, you are not in the equation of those who have the responsibility to recognize merit. So in my view, therefore, I agree that there is some there are some men behind the mask. In those days, there's a column in the New Nigerian newspaper, Candido, the man behind the mask. There are some people behind the mask, and there are people who are not in power that are more powerful than those who are in power in Nigeria. When you take the book of IBB and read it, you will discover that while people in power are television, there are remote control that remote control the television to work. And until we are collectively determined to allow those in power to come to power rightly and do what is right, and when they are doing what is wrong, we can remove them, Nigerian potentials will not be realized.
Right.
That's my answer.
Yes. And senior advocate, I think Prof highlighted it, you also highlighted it in one of your submissions as well, that this is not the first time. It looks like the National Assembly is designed to silence those who oppose whatever is going on there, or the presiding officer. I recall Senator Shehu Sani saying that when he revealed the salary he was earning as a senator, he almost got suspended. We saw Abdul Ningi raised issues concerning budget padding, how he was suspended and treated by the National Assembly. So if it's so structured that those in the opposition or those who have dissenting voices cannot speak up, what then is the true essence of having a representative? Because representative government is the essence of democracy, because all of us cannot be in Abuja. We have to elect those who will be there on our behalf. So if those who are there on our behalf cannot speak up, are always threatened with suspension or have their pays withheld by the National Assembly, what then is the essence of this? Some have even argued that maybe we should just do a unicameral legislation instead of having this two-house parliament that we're operating now. So I'd like to get your take on that and the advocacy for unicameral legislation.
My view is that the bicameral legislation is unnecessary. It is draining our natural resources, our money, and we're seeing no results. And so, if I have my way, we will go for bicameral legislation and at part-time, on part-time basis, and the salaries and allowances to be paid to those people should just be for sitting allowance. Two, in my humble view and my profound respect, I do not think that we are practicing representative democracy. I think what we are practicing is people selecting who they want to be at the National Assembly, either by hook or crook means, to be there, so as to give semblance of legitimacy, of authority to all atrocities that needed to be committed. And because these atrocities that are to be committed are to be investigated and punished and proved in the court of law by the executive, we have an executive that is not alive, not even the current one, even before, that we have been having consistent executives in Nigeria that have not had the interest of the masses at heart. And why do I say so? How many former heads of states or presidents who have been accused in the probe panel of spending humongous amount of money have been arrested and prosecuted in Nigeria? Can you name one? None. How many of the state governors who have been alleged with to have siphoned the resources of Nigeria, and investigation showed that amount of money, have had their days in court and jail, except Governor Darie and Jolly Nyame of Taraba State? And before you know it, in a twinkle of an eye, like the speed of lightning, the executive used prerogative of mercy to pardon them. And so, when you put all of these things together, I think what we run looks like a system of tale by moonlight. It's a Nollywood. It's a drama system. What goes behind the scene is different from what you see. We have two faces of our people in governance. The face of pontificating as being Democrat, and the other face of action that shows despotism. And so I see Nigerian democracy as democratic despotism, where the freedom of the people to question those who are in front, who are leading, is in jeopardy. And then, too, we have imbibed a culture, and that is the culture of taking ownership of wrongs. And I think Professor Patrick Lumumba said it, that in Africa, we take ownership of wrongs. This is our thief, and so we must support him. That is why today, when evils or allegations of evils are made against personalities, you see people carrying placards, including those whose tomorrows are being destroyed, to support those who are destroying their tomorrow. And so we are in a quagmire. And then I ask a question: what is the moral value of Nigeria as a state? Prof is a dawn of a university. In those days, when we were in the university, you do not know the road to the door of your lecturer's office. You go to see your results on the notice board. But today, I tell you, people in primary school are committing examination malpractices, being aided and abetted by their parents, because we reward certificate rather than knowledge. And this takes me to the point that in Nigeria for today, only a infinitesimal number of people get to a position of responsibility on the basis of merit. What you know hardly matters now, but who you know and who you worship. That's the yardstick for elevation. And it's unfortunate that we are where we are because of who we are.
Yeah, senior advocates, there are those who have been advocating for restructuring to address some of these challenges that you've mentioned. They've talked about local government autonomy. In fact, the current Attorney General says that the autonomy is in full swing now, that any governor that mismanages local government fund commits an impeachable offense. Those who support the government mention this as a point of their commitment to reforming the democracy and restructuring the country. They also talk about how they've been able to, quote-unquote, devolve powers, especially in the electricity sector, by signing the Electricity Act and empowering states to generate and distribute their own electricity across the country. So I'd like you to touch on the question of restructuring and what has happened to local government autonomy, Electricity Act, and what have you. To what extent do you think you should address some of these anomalies that you mentioned?
How sincere is the executive for the local government autonomy? I must commend the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation for securing the judgments of the Supreme Court that decree local government autonomy and financial autonomy for the local government. But are we not obeying that judgment in breach even now? For instance, the recent judgment of the Supreme Court that ordered that money meant for the local government should not be released to the local government. Is it not a spanner in the autonomy of the local government in Rivers State to get their money? So that's one thing. Two, when you talk about restructuring to hand over the system to who? I think I should advocate, in my view, that we need character restructuring. We need to restructure our heads. We need to restructure ourselves. Because when it comes to doing wrong things, those who have the responsibility and in power are united in one common denominator, perpetuate the evil. If you give a state to one tribe to run, within that tribe are people who will be discriminated. So our problem, in my view, is not about restructuring. How large is Nigeria compared to the United States of America? How large is Nigeria compared to Canada? So in my view, it is not restructuring that matters. It's our inability to obey what the law says we should do. The Constitution has set out how there should be development. Resources are voted in year out for us to have electricity. You heard of Pro Panel that talks about 16 billion or million
dollars
Mambila electricity. How some people have confessed that money were being paid and no contract was executed, and yet those are the same set of people that have been in corridor of power and they are moving with security protection. Shouldn't such people be made examples? Who is to make the example? It's not you, it's not me, but those who either have put themselves forward or have forced themselves on us that are in power. And so I think that if there's any restructuring we need to do, we need to restructure whoever is the president of Nigeria to take a decision that his or her name will be written in gold. And how do we do it? We must pursue all thieves, jail them without discrimination. How did the country you call Singapore develop? When Lee Kuan Yew was there, he did not know that this was my in-law, this was my friend, this was my political associates, until we begin to deal even with those who are close to us and jail them for the evil they perpetuate against the people of Nigeria. Whether you restructure Nigeria into 214 tribes and give them states and begin to think of dividing money, there will still be chiefs within those restructured federations who will not allow the economy to trickle down to the people. The electricities that we are witnessing today, why are we witnessing epileptics in electricity? Humongous amount of money was paid NEPA was unbundled. We now have disco. Even within Abuja, some of us are suppliers of the amenities to ourselves. We put solar system. What stops the Nigerian government from embarking on large-scale solar farm and construction? We have the God-given nature to give us electricity. Why do we by solar? Is there anybody in government thinking of those? And even if somebody is thinking of it, will the money voted be used judiciously for what is budgeted for? Our problem is ourselves. We are the problems of ourselves. Nigerians are the one ruling this country. Do we have patriotic and nationalistic zeal to leave a legacy for the people? And mark you, how many people pay taxes? How many? And then when taxes are paid, are those taxes being used for the purpose they are meant for? And so, I think the only restructuring I think we need to do is to sit down and restructure our brains and think of the generation yet unborn and the legacy we are to leave behind.
Right.
Because good name is better than gold and silver. But today, people no longer matter what is good is not what matters to the people, but how primitive you can unjustly acquire the wealth unaccounted for. And you are celebrated. Some people have been in politics since God knows what. They cannot tell you one business they have done, but they are stupendously rich. And these are the people that the religious, the ecclesiastical cycle will be calling upon to come and make donations. The other time I heard Professor Charles Soludo, and I was happy. When you invite a public officer for functions, and he's donating money to you, and you are clapping your hands, are you not aiding and abetting that public officer to steal more? Because a public officer, how much is your salary? That you are going to donate $500 million for construction of a mosque or a church in your village. So I don't think that what we need is a physical restructuring of Nigeria, but we need a restructuring of our hearts and of our minds to gear towards having Nigeria to be a better place. Nigeria has great potential. Resources are there, but those resources are being misapplied by some people who have the privilege to represent us. And we are the victims of the oppression of the powers that be.
Right, let me go to Prof. Prof? Hello, Prof, are you with us? Hello, Prof?
I'm right here.
Yes, you have the floor, sir.
Okay, thank you. I think I agree with this submission of the senior advocate of Nigeria, and I've always argued in that light. There are two things that bothers me. The first, which I think I want to get his view on, the first has to do with this tendency of members of the executive to disobey court order. If you look back to the case of the withholding of the local government funds in Lagos State under the Obasanjo government, President Obasanjo disobeyed that court order until the expiry of his tenure. It was when Yar'Adua came that he decided to obey the order of the court. My first question is, do we have to wait for a president to obey such an order? Is there nothing Nigerians can do to ensure that members of the executive obey the order of the court? Because what you are seeing now is that even the legislature are now learned from the executive to take the courts on seriously. Then the other one is, clearly from our discussion, from your submission, morality is a big problem in Nigeria. And for us in political science, we have actually identified that as a big problem right from the First Republic. The question is, when you speak to a politician, he will tell you that politics is amoral. And the fear is, if good is no different from right in politics, how can the state be made or be put in the service of good?
All right, thank you, Prof. I will approach the first leg of your question from two fronts. First is the point that the judiciary, which order is being disobeyed, have now acquired the stomach to resign to fate for reasons that only them can explain. And I take you back to memory lane. Remember in 1984, when the chief officer was suspended, he went to court. The case was before my Lord Honorable Justice 𝐃𝐈𝐒. And while he made an order, the permanent secretary issues an order dismissing the man. From the stories we heard, my Lord was prevailed upon to vacate his order. Rather than vacating the order, his lordship decided to resign from the bench in protestation against that ungodly interference with judicial process. So, respect is earned, not forced. And so for judicial orders in Nigeria to begin to earn the respect it deserves, the judiciary itself must be seen to be above board. Where the judiciary appears not to be above board and their suggestion, their perception to say so, then the order can be treated with levity. After all, it was the late Abiola that says that the hands of the giver is always on top. That's the first leg to that question, answer to that question. Second one is that even if the judiciary is not above board and it has made an order, those who believe in the tomorrow of Nigeria must show leadership to obey that order and demonstrate to international community that Nigeria is not a lawless society. And so those who knowingly and intentionally disobey order of court, whether rightly or wrongly, should be made to face the consequences of that disobedience. And the only person who can do so is the executive, because the judiciary has no power to enforce its own order. There are no machinery for judiciary to go and do execution of its own order. Again, that brings us to the executive. The executive, as of today, appears, and even before now, from the time we started ruling ourselves till now, appears to be law unto themselves. And they use law to commit illegality. How do I mean? You remember the Ladu Commis case, how under General Gowon, they came with a decree that purport to oust the jurisdiction of court. But you then know that when we had judiciary that was independent, they had ways and means of telling the executive that you cannot engage in rascality and get away with it. Odumego Ojukwu by Lagos State government is a classical example where his lordship, I think 𝐃𝐈𝐒 says that the rule of law speaks the same language both in wartime and in peacetime. How many of our judicial officers today have been allowed, and I use the word allowed, to give sound jurisprudential reasoning and sound logic in arriving at justice of the matter? Many cases today, I've had cause to argue before that many cases today in Nigeria are dying on technical grounds of technicality. And so, for me, the judiciary and the executive have the blame in the disobedience to court orders. Your second question was on, I can't remember that one now.
Yeah, Prof?
It has to do with the moral question.
Now, the question of moral question. For me, if you look at the Constitution, it creates the Code of Conduct Bureau and then the Code of Conduct for Public Officers. That is a moral issue. When you talk about equity, you are talking about morality, you are talking about value. And so I do not want to be told that politics should not have moral. It is the way and manner we have allowed immorality to be used as a ground to perpetuate evil using judicial process that makes us to be where we are. In other words, the institution that have the responsibility to insist on morality in governance is the institution of judiciary. And when the judiciary, therefore, decide to give judicial stamp of legitimacy to those who use immoral process to acquire power on the technical grounds of proof or on the technical grounds of legality, then those in power will continue to engage in immorality. For instance, it is common knowledge. It is common knowledge to every person in Nigeria that 27 lawmakers in Rivers State publicly, and it's on social media, deposed to an affidavit that they have defected. But in the recent judgment of the Supreme Court, instead of holding those people responsible for constitutional sacrilege, the court said that, from what I saw, that defection is much more than waving flag and deposing to an affidavit. If a man leading me comes to say that I am no longer a lecturer in the University of Jos, and I have moved to University of Ibadan, Faculty of Law as lecturer, and I was welcomed by the Dean of Law, Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan. And then when the ground is no longer favorable to me in Ibadan, and then I'll come back and say I am still a lecturer in the Faculty of Law, University of Jos. Shouldn't a court of law and court of equity hold me to my election, to my words, that I am bound by what I put on oath? And so my view is this, and I take you back to what my Lord Nikki Toby said. Partiality is the attribute of politicians. Impartiality is the attribute of the Judas. And so until our Judas begins to put on the light which they are and begin to shine in darkness so that darkness will no longer comprehend them, the more darkness will continue to overshadow the politics of Nigeria. The only person that can hold politicians to the moral value of partisan politics is the judiciary.
Right.
And unfortunately, it appears to me that the judiciary is closing its eyes to the damaging effects of these immoral processes that produce those people in power. I had argued before that all these presumptions of regularities of INEC documents, in the face of what Nigerians know and judges should know, we should now begin to think of doing away with such so-called presumption of regularity. How do you presume what is irregular, regular? And so, today, all you need to do to be in power, Prof, is to acquire some sophisticated gun and get electoral document filled, and you are declared winner of the election.
Right.
So we must look at the process through which